Welcome back. Lance, this Toronto lineup is simply packed full of talent, but who would you consider to be the team's franchise players?
Well, Rodney, it's really hard to label one or two guys with that distinction, considering that Donaldson and Tulowitzki are locked up, and they've got some great arms on that pitching staff in Sanchez, Osuna, and Stroman.
Well, to help narrow that down for us, we'll turn things over to a few more of our baseball connoisseurs.
Thank you. I'm Saif Ahmed here with Tyler Van Bagel, Sean Lavery, and Jordan Fusa. The Blue Jays finally made the playoffs after a 22-year drought. There were some tremendous performances on both sides of the ball. As we take a look at this deep roster for the Jays, can you guys pinpoint maybe one person as being the franchise player?
Yes, if you have to look at third baseman Josh Donaldson, he gets it done offensively and he gets it done on the defensive side too. He hit out 41 home runs for the Jays last year and made routine plays at third base barehanded that no one else in the MLB could do. And on top of all that, if that's not enough, he did win the AL MVP. And he gets the energy going in the clubhouse, and that's why he's the Toronto Blue Jays franchise player.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Tyler. He is an amazing player. He absolutely deserved the AL MVP this year, and he does bring a lot of energy to the team, but I don't think anyone brought energy to the team quite like Jose Bautista did in Game 5 of that ALDS when he flipped his bat to the moon. And I got to say that he is definitely this team's franchise player. Josh Donaldson's only been here for a year. Jose Bautista has been here since 2008, and he's been crushing homers on a routine basis since then.
Well, you guys both kind of mentioned that energy factor, and to me, the guy that's the franchise player is the one with the most passion. That is Marcus Stroman. No one brings more energy and charisma to this ball club than Stroman, so he has that whole personality side of a franchise player, and he also has the skill on the field. He went 4-0 with an ERA under 2 in the regular season, and he pitched pretty well in the playoffs when you consider he came off that devastating knee injury. Now with David Price down in Boston, the onus of ace is on the 24-year-old Stroman, which is a huge responsibility for such a young guy. That just speaks about how the Blue Jays trust Stroman. They trust him enough. He's my franchise player.
Yeah, Stroman finally looking to stay healthy and get a full season in with the Jays for the first time. I mean, injuries do happen, though. They're part of the game. Do you see one of these guys that the Blue Jays cannot afford to lose for an extended period of time?
Yeah, Steve, you got to go back to Josh Donaldson. He's the third baseman, and you don't have a replacement for him at third base. Even if you did have one, it wouldn't be anything what he can do during the regular season with all the home runs and all the crazy things he does on the field. There's no one that can replace Josh Donaldson, so they cannot afford to lose him for a long period of time.
Well, I'm going to go with the opening day starter, Marcus Stroman. When you consider that the biggest knack on the Blue Jays is that their pitching staff is already thin, to lose their best arm, that would obviously be a huge blow to the Blue Jays. They can't afford to lose Marcus Stroman for an extended period of time.
Well, you definitely can't lose a pitcher, but I'm going to have to go off the board here and say that you can't afford to lose center fielder Kevin Pillar. He is the captain of your outfield. He's the guy who's making all the calls on who takes what ball, and I don't really trust his replacement, Dalton Pompey, to come in and do what Kevin Pillar is able to do. We saw his greatness last season. We know how good he is. You definitely can't afford to lose him for an extended period of time.
Another player we did not mention was Troy Tulowitzki. He's an MVP caliber player, and look for him to have a bounce back here in 2016 in what should be another fascinating season for the Toronto Blue Jays.
During the 2012 offseason, the Blue Jays acquired that year's NL Cy Young winner, R.A. Dickey. But just like his knuckleball, Dickey's numbers didn't necessarily end up where he'd expected. He finished his first year as a Blue Jay with an ERA above 4, and the team, well, they finished dead last in the division. Since then, the knuckleballers improved significantly, and as Colton Prail explains, even at 41 years old, the 13-year veteran continues to chase perfection.
R.A. Dickey's quest for perfection starts with consistency. The Blue Jays veteran hurler has spent an impressive 13 seasons in the majors, but still finds himself struggling off the hop, and it's not just a mental hurdle. During Dickey's stint in Toronto, he's walked a total 206 batters. 87 of those came in the first 2 months of each season. That's a whopping 42% of his career walks as a Jay in a span of 6 months. It's affecting his record. Dickey is 14-20 in that time, and he knows his lack of control has been costly.
When I don't walk people, I usually have good results.
Last year, Dickey tried changing up his offseason regime so that he would hopefully hit his stride by April, but it didn't work out. Now, Dickey is focusing on coming into the season as prepared as possible, both physically and tactically.
So I'm just trying to be as lean and as light and as strong as I can, and just in control of my mechanic as best I can.
Mechanic. It's a word that has found its way into his vocabulary more frequently of late. To hear him speak of it, Dickey isn't polishing off a masterpiece, he's taking a hammer to the marble.
I think the number one thing that I care about at this point are all three of the pitches that I mainly throw come out of my hand in the strike zone and stay in a strike for a long amount of time, and the answer to that is yes right now.
He has indeed taken a hammer to the marble. Dickey dropped 12 pounds in the offseason and underwent knee surgery, all in an effort to improve his consistency and his starts. Dickey hasn't had an ERA under 5 in the first 2 months of his season since 2012, but if he could replicate the feat this year, the Jays might finally see the pitcher that they traded for. From Toronto, Colton Prale.
Just a month after being eliminated by the Royals, Toronto fans were faced with the realization that Mark Buehrle wouldn't be back and that David Price was shipping up to Boston. Our baseball experts tell us now who will fill the void left by a couple of all-star lefties.
Thanks, I'm Eli Billen. Beside me today, Dale Manuktuk, Caroline Anderson, Pat Gregoire. And guys, Marcus Stroman, R.A. Dickey, Marco Estrada, and J.A. Happ. That's pretty much the guys that we can guarantee as the 4 starters for the Toronto Blue Jays. But there's still one question mark up in the air, that 5th spot. Who's going to land in that spot, Dale?
I think it's going to be Aaron Sanchez, but I don't believe my opinion matters because Mark Shapiro already said that it's most likely going to be Gavin Floyd when he was on Sportsnet, the Fan 590, talking to Jeff Blair. But I think Aaron Sanchez deserves it. You're talking about a guy who pitched 11 games last year. They only hit .237 against them, and the team is familiar with him. You can't measure how comfort factors into situations like this.
I think the Jays need the veteran presence of Gavin Floyd. He's a guy obviously coming off back-to-back elbow injuries, but he's somebody who came into training camp proving that he wants to be that reliable guy he once was in Chicago. Came in with 20 extra pounds of muscle, new diet, new training regimen. This is a guy who wants to prove that he can be that pitcher he once was.
Now, I agree with Caroline there, as in I think Gavin Floyd's going to start the year, but I don't necessarily agree with the move. I think Aaron Sanchez has proven himself that he's ready to be a starter in the major leagues. But with that being said, it's the durability that seems to be a huge issue with the Blue Jays brass. But also on the other side, you look at it, he was really solid in the bullpen at the end of last year when he came back from injury. So it's more of a testament how strong, how much they believe in him to being able to shut down the late innings.
Well, it's so tough, right? Because you mentioned the 130 innings, and this is the difference between the eye test and the Moneyball thing. And I think you got to drop the analytics for a little bit because it's like going into an interview and people say to you, you don't have enough experience. But when are they going to give you the experience in order to have enough to get the job?
Yeah, and whoever gets that 5th and starting role is going to have something to prove, but other guys have stuff to prove. Marcus Stroman only played 4 games last year. J.A. Happ had a good stint in Pittsburgh, but struggled with Seattle. And then you also have Marco Estrada. He's only pitched 1 good season. Who has the most to prove for this Blue Jays pitching staff?
I think it's a guy that you didn't even mention there in Drew Hutchison. I think he's going to be an opening day starter once again, but down the QEW in Buffalo with the Bison. But that doesn't mean that it's all over for Drew Hutchison. I think if he has a solid start down in AAA, can then come up when they do need him, because let's be honest, they're going to need more than 5 starting pitchers throughout the year. He could come up and then maybe down the road turn into a little bit of a long relief role.
I think somebody who has the most to prove is Marcus Stroman. He came out and he said he wanted to be the team's ace. He became a fan favorite last year. Obviously has never pitched a complete season in the major leagues, but this is a guy who holds himself to incredibly high standards, and he can surpass them.
Yeah, Marcus Stroman has smashed expectations, Caroline. So I agree with you. I think it's Marcus Stroman, and that's in terms of quantity. He's got the most to prove in terms of being the starting pitcher for the Jays, their ace, pitching a full 162, being one of the faces of the majors, and I think he has all the tools necessary.
Yeah, well, no matter what, the whole pitching rotation is going to have something to prove, because pitching is the one thing that a lot of people are holding back from the Toronto Blue Jays to win another AL East title.
The Blue Jays finally ended their long postseason drought, due in large part to the moves made by general manager Alex Anthopoulos. However, with AA no longer in the mix, Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro face mounting pressure from a fan base that got its first taste of the postseason in 22 years. Jack Weber gives us some insight into the Jays' new look.
While there's usually a grace period for new management, Blue Jays president Mark Shapiro doesn't have the luxury of a patient fan base behind him. Many were devastated when GM Alex Anthopoulos decided not to re-sign in Toronto, saying after Shapiro took over that he didn't think it was the right fit. Anthopoulos had just given many Jays fans the ride of their life in 2015, pulling off one blockbuster trade after another, engineering Toronto's first playoff berth since 1993, and a dramatic run to Game 6 of the ALCS. Shapiro was vilified among fans, being viewed as the man who chased Anthopoulos away. But despite the rocky beginning, Shapiro still believes he has an incredible opportunity in front of him.
My feelings and my priorities that are top of mind Number one, what an incredibly exciting time to be joining the Blue Jays organization. To watch baseball play out here last summer, to watch through the lens of a shaking camera as this building pulsated.
Many also felt that Anthopoulos' departure left John Gibbons as a lame duck manager. However, Shapiro insisted that's not the case and offered high praise for Gibbons' work with the team.
John did an outstanding job, and we're extremely happy to have him back next year. In addition, Tony's already reached out to every single staff member of the team. They are all invited back, and we hope to have them back intact next year as well. We expect to.
Shapiro inherits a team that looks poised to win this season, but it might take some creativity to keep the team contending beyond this year. The Jays have several key pending free agents, most notably Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion, and a depleted farm system after trading for the likes of Josh Donaldson, Troy Tulowitzki, and David Price. If Shapiro is intent on winning over the fans, perhaps the best way to do that would be by figuring out a way to keep a contender in Toronto for 2016 and beyond. From Toronto, I'm Jack Weber.
Some baseball managers are fiery. Some can best be described as reserved, while others a little more relaxed. And then there's John Gibbons. The man is so laid back, he literally does his post-game interviews while leaning back. Chris Pimentel has more on the Bluebirds bench boss and his status with the club moving forward.
In 2015, Blue Jays manager John Gibbons could do no wrong.
And the Blue Jays can celebrate their first division title in 22 years.
Not only did he help end the playoff drought, he also took a simplistic approach to the ever-evolving game.
Pretty simple business if you get down to it. Those guys that got all those complicated answers, I'm kidding you.
Gibbons has the second most wins as a manager in franchise history, behind only Cito Gaston. They share a laid-back attitude towards a star-studded team and also led an offensive juggernaut. That's probably why new management has faith in him.
John Gibbons will be back to manage this team next year. I think his strength, his toughness, his consistency were the hand that this club needed to ensure that they had the year they had.
He's known for his fiery ejections, but also has a laid-back attitude. It's a contradiction that's only helped the Jays. Gone are the days of player outbursts with the manager because Gibbons has evolved into more of a relaxed man. That seems to be the recipe that has allowed the Jays to become Toronto's star team in 2016.
We caught fire and everybody got caught up in it, and you know, we came up one step short. We'd like to finish that off.
After coming off the best season of his career, John Gibbons decided to take the rollout option out of his contract. It's a bit of a risk, however, because new management can move on from him if the Jays struggle this season. From Toronto, Chris Pimentel.
Coming up on Taking Flight, we answer 3 burning questions. How will the Jays' new management and John Gibbons build the team for 2016? Which Jays prospects to keep an eye out for? And what improvements have been made at the Rogers Center?